Hello and welcome back to the Dose of Desi. Today is Saturday, August 13th, 2022, and tonight is our 12th episode of the podcast. For this one, we thought we'd take a step back and just have the two of us here. No guests this time, although we will have more guests in the future.
That's right. Welcome back, everyone. So, like Hassan said, this is our 12th episode. When we first started our podcast, the Dose of Desi, something we always talked about discussing is the topic of relationships. And I know this has kind of been on the back burner for a while. But Hassan and I have always talked about this, just amongst the two of us. So we figured we would give this a try, and you may or may not know, but Hassan and I have vastly different experiences with relationships, and that's what I think will make this a fascinating conversation. So since this topic is really a broad topic, we may revisit this topic in the future from another angle, or I don't know, just might try something different in the future again as a part two within this topic. So with that said, let's jump right in. And Hassan, do you want to take it off or kick it off?
Yeah. So I guess first things to kind of level set. What is your current relationship status?
My relationship status, perpetually single. No, I'm just kidding. But I've been single most of my life, and I'm still single as far as I know. So
As far as you know.
as far as I know, because there's a lot of confusion, but that's a more personal confusion in terms of relationships. What about you? How I know you're married, so how long have you been married, and what's one thing you absolutely love and one thing you very much dislike about being married?
So I am married. Got married in September 2016. So doing the math there, that's almost 6 years in September, which is next month, which is
Time
crazy.
flies, yeah.
Yeah. And my wife, Maheen. And as far as something that I love about married life, so really it's having someone to truly share my life with and to really spend time with, and to just really be like my best friend, whether we go places together, watch stuff together, just kind of that you're always you wake up next to someone, there's someone there to kind of help support you, and just to be able to share your life, I think is just something really special, and that's what I love about being married.
Like the warmth that another human brings into your life, both literal and figurative, right?
Yeah, because if you go through tough times or whatever, you have somebody there to kind of help support you. You can kind of count on them, and you go through good times, they're there to help celebrate as well, and it goes both ways. And it just gives you another sense of meaning in your day-to-day life, I guess, to have another person with you. So
Purpose.
That's what yes
That's the word I was thinking.
Exactly.
Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. And then something that I hate about married life, I don't hate is such a strong word. So I
Dislike.
I ultimately it is a little bit of kind of the flip side of not being able to just do things on my own schedule. I can't just get up and go somewhere right away. You have somebody else in your life that you want to account for and not just abandon, right? Now that doesn't mean you don't have a degree of independence and be able to do things separately when you want to, which is great. We both kind of have that understanding with each other as well, which I appreciate. But still, just the fact that you do have a commitment, right? And so you can't I can't just binge playing video games for 24 hours. Not that I've ever even done that before. That sounds terrible.
You can't just escape into your man cave and disappear for a few days.
I do, for like an hour or two or something maybe, but yeah, I can't just get away from all of life's responsibilities.
Yeah,
Um,
especially
but
because you also now have a son. So
yes, and honestly, that's probably where that feeling sometimes has kind of been exaggerated a bit more. Sometimes you
right.
just want to get away for a bit. And I love my son; it's an absolute pleasure spending time with him. But he is, high energy, and sometimes, you do just want to take a little breather and stuff too, But so it's just something that you just have to manage, I guess. But that's one thing, I guess.
Yeah. All right. So what
Yeah.
was wait, was that what you disliked about it? You said that, right?
Yes.
Okay, I just want to
Yes.
make sure.
Yeah.
Nice.
So for you, how long have you been single, and what's one thing that you sort of enjoy about your singledom, and something that you hate or
How long
dislike?
how long have I been single? Like, so I'm like almost 34. I would say like 32 years, maybe a little more, 32 and a half, something like that.
Well,
Um,
I guess like most recently then, right? Because
most recently,
I would
let's
imagine you would be
see.
single for most of your childhood and growing up, right? I mean, that's pretty
I'm
expected, I
just
guess. But
I'm just being facetious and joking around. Um, most recently, I would say about 2.5 years. But in those, that doesn't mean, like my relationship status has been single, but that doesn't mean I haven't dated in those 2.5 years. I've done actually quite a lot of dating, probably the most I've ever done in my life, in the last 2.5 years. I've dated more aggressively in the last year and a half than ever before. So not to sound intense, but yeah. So that's that. What was the other question? What's one thing I enjoy about being single?
yes, one thing you enjoy and one thing you dislike.
Let's see. I definitely enjoy the fact that so okay, like you're mentioning that you have to like kind of work around a schedule for like of another person and this and that. I like that, I can basically come and go as I please, which is nice, though my schedule's gotten a lot busier, even just being single, getting, having more responsibilities and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I like coming and going as I please, not having to, like necessarily report to anyone. But on the flip side, that comes with its downsides of sometimes things get really lonely. Sometimes you want to be with someone. So that's one thing I dislike. It's very much yin and yang. The flip side of this is the flip side of that kind of thing. Um, One other thing I like about being single, I'm kind of a stickler for like leaving things and then finding them where I left them. I know that sounds dumb, but it's the nice thing about being single is like, and living on your own is like, yeah, you leave something somewhere and yeah, find it where you left it. So that's kind of nice. Whereas before when I've been in a relationship or outside of the relationship, when I've lived with my parents or with roommates or something like that, sometimes things don't always end up where you leave them. So yeah. What
I can attest to that being true. When you're married, things do not stay where they were. And
or,
yes.
or like the soap ends up like you know gone, or the shampoos, I don't know, whatever, just
Hmm.
things like that. um Having dated women, sometimes you'd find like this is gonna sound real disgusting, but like hair in the drain. But then again, I'm a hairy guy
I
too.
did not know just how, like, literally, like, it's it's crazy how much
Right.
hair you find like everywhere. I did not know it was that bad.
I
Like,
mean,
just like,
I thought it was bad enough as I was, being alone, because I'm pretty hairy,
right.
right? But then like dating someone and like, staying with someone, it's just like, what? Like, where did that come from? Like,
Mhm.
anyway, you go ahead, you tell me.
Yeah, no, I totally agree for sure that with that. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Just it's funny. I think again, just a disclaimer. I'm a guy, so I'm giving my perspective. So there might be some bias based on my experience, but it's just my experience. So from my experience, it seems that like from my perspective, it seems that the things that gross out men and the things that gross out women, at least in my experience, have been so different. Like as a guy, like I find like a giant ball of hair in the shower, and I'm like, what the heck? Whereas like, the girl, she finds something else and she's totally weirded out by it. Whereas like dudes are like, that's not a big deal. So it's kind of funny.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
again, it's not always true. It's just generally speaking.
Right.
Anyway,
Right.
all right, I have a question for you.
Okay.
Um, can you share your journey or any insights about how you got to where you are in your relationship? Let's start with that.
Yeah. So so I had, what would be traditionally considered, I guess, an arranged marriage. And for those that aren't aware of our culture, arranged is
Ooh, I'm just kidding.
uh, at least not, sometimes when you hear the term, you think like, oh, this person's like forced into, being with somebody that they don't even know, like they haven't even met before or something like that.
Right.
Um, so for me, it's basically dating, but with families and very much more reserved and on a very quick timeline, is sort of how I would say it. So I uh, was worked with my parents and my mom especially to like kind of network and as the parents do and kind of talk to people and, oh, do you know someone and do you know this or that, and they put me on different websites and stuff to
Wait, they put
to
you on
find
it,
someone.
or you agreed to it? They were
Well,
just
no, I
like,
mean, I
you're going
agreed,
on
but
this
like
website.
they sort of manage the profile, so to
Okay.
speak, right?
I
Because they're like
just
the first line of contact. Yeah. So I didn't actually ever specifically like on the website myself, like
okay.
but if they added things or the profile and all that, like they did with me telling them what to put, on there. Yeah. And yeah, and then ended up, the family got in touch with another family in New York, and then talked to them, and both myself and Maheen were interested, so we started talking, and then eventually went over to New York to meet her, and they came over here, and a few months later, and we're engaged. And then
was that
right, so I think it was like around September, October or so first, met her and everything, and then January we were engaged, and then
yeah.
September married. So basically a year from getting to know her to marriage. Um
Yeah, I remember,
yeah.
not to like, go back in time or whatever, but I remember being at your engagement ceremony and taking pictures for, just at the wedding, just being an amateur photographer, and it was a fun time. But yeah, I think that, yeah. I guess my question is, how did you feel getting engaged within a few months? Was that like overwhelming?
Um I mean, it was sort of, I knew what I was getting into, like I knew it would be a quick timeline, that sort of thing. There's always kind of the fear that you always have, like, is this the right person, is it going to work out and all
Mhm,
that.
mhm.
um Ultimately the way I sort of approached it is, as long as the core of what I was looking for, was true, and good values, and you know, good family, everything, like as long as and the core stuff was true, the rest you can always work out and deal with. And so I, took a leap of faith, so to speak, and I mean, she had similar values, similar, way of practicing the culture and religion and everything, and just similar personalities and interests in some ways. Um, and I mean, we literally, like, long term would be playing like Legend of Zelda, like with each other or whatever online, and uh, I didn't expect that would happen, so
You both had the nerd
it all
factor down.
exactly, both big
No offense,
nerds.
I'm a nerd too, but yeah.
Yeah, no, for sure, for sure. I mean, like you could see all the posters and I mean, yeah. Um, but yeah, it all kind of worked out. And then, obviously leading up to marriage, it's one of those things where even though you've been talking to this person for a little while, it's still an accelerated timeline. You're still kind of getting to know them, and you have to really work hard to navigate that and figure out, how to live together, right? And it was a much larger adjustment for Maheen having to move to Virginia and be away from her family. She actually does have some extended family in the area, which was nice, which was helpful, but still a big adjustment. And I think it took a bit of time. I'd say, like, good first year was really us kind of trying to communicate, work things out, trying to figure out um, what our lifestyle is going to be, how we communicate with each other, what works, what doesn't work, and kind of just sort of laying that foundation. And definitely took some adjustment, but that really helped us going forward to really figure out how we would establish that. And, yeah.
And I think you pretty much answered the next question I had, which was basically like, did you have any trials and how did that lead you to where you are? So you mentioned during the first year and what that was like.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of things were like, like different people have different ways of communicating or expressing how they feel, and it just, we just kind of sat down, had a lot of like conversations about like, hey, if you're feeling this way, like how are you going to express that, or talk, or if I'm feeling this way, how do you want me to bring that to you, and really just kind of um figure things out. And it brought us to sort of a good understanding. So I mean, since then, we kind of always default back to what we established up front about how we would share things and what works for us. So that first year really helped a lot in establishing that.
Gotcha. One other quick question. I know you mentioned that within the first few months of meeting each other, like you figured out like you had similar values and this and that and the other. Some would argue, some people that are a little bit more skeptical, and want to date a little bit longer and then get to know someone. Some people would basically argue, how do you get to know someone's values, or how they live and all that in such a short period of time, before you get engaged? How did you know that? Like, did you sit down and ask like intense questions to each other? Like, I don't know, like how did you determine that in the span of like 4 or 5 months?
Yeah, I mean, so I think like some of it is, yes, conversations, and the fact that like you're talking to get married, right? You're kind of going into it like knowing that is the intention.
Okay.
Let's not waste time, and so you have some conversations, and then you meet, you sit down with, and it's not just with her, then with the family and stuff, and kind of see how
Right.
they are, how everybody interacts with each other. You kind of um just get a feel. And obviously people could be lying or putting up a front and stuff. I mean, there's always that possibility, but
Right.
at the end of the day, you judge based on what you see. And I guess you could take the flip side. And I mentioned before this, I watched Indian Matchmaking on Netflix, the new season.
I didn't
And
sorry, I didn't see that
um,
coming.
on Indian Matchmaking, the argument that the main matchmaker Sivanti always says is like, the more that you have different choices, or the more you talk and stuff, the more confusion that introduces, and tends to, then people start to get
Sometimes.
nitpicky and get into it. And
Yes.
so if anything, sometimes that could confuse you and cause more problems. Now that's her argument or whatever, but I guess it goes either way, right? Doesn't work
Yeah.
for everyone, but it worked out in my case.
I'm glad I did. I'm glad I did. I can just say from personal experience, when I've just liked someone and not thought much about it and just given love to someone, it's always been great. It's like the moment when you start thinking, that's when the confusion begins, or even the other person, because then you're like, okay, do I back off? Do I not? What do I do? But I know how I feel about them. Like, so yeah, that's, you could say that's essentially a process I've been going through more recently. Anyway, I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll turn it to you then. So what are you looking for, like in a partner or in a relationship? And then, maybe along those lines, for any of the past relationships that you've had, are there, you know, maybe examples or something of why it wasn't what you wanted, maybe?
Okay. Let's start with what I'm currently looking for. So as you know, Hassan, out of probably like anyone else, I've talked to you more about this than I would say most people, and I have one or two other friends that I would say I've talked to a little bit about it, but I've talked to you most about this. Like you've seen me go through breakups and depression, and you've seen me go through like meeting someone, being like just at the top of the world and all of that. So after like all these experiences and all these years of dating, heartbreak, getting rejected, rejecting someone, all of that, having seen all the sides of this to a to a great degree, I think what I'm looking for is someone who knows what they want, like someone who's a little bit clear. I feel like a lot of people, especially as you get older and you meet people, they've been hurt. They come with past pains and whatnot, including myself, right? I think I want someone who either has worked through those or is actively working through those so that, they can create a good, healthy relationship with me. And that they know that that's what they want with me, that they know. And I think at this point in my life, my intention is to go into a relationship with also the intention of marriage, because I don't have time or energy to waste. Like, been there, done that. So, um, on in addition to that, I would say communication and emotional openness. I know I'm being very specific about these things, but I've gone through my fair share of things in relationships. So I I'm kind of a all or nothing. Like I'm either in love with you or I'm not in love with you. Like either I just admire the heck out of you or I don't feel anything and I'm just, I'm out. And I'm working on finding that balance within myself. But because I'm that type of person, at least, currently, and working on finding that balance, it's good to have someone who's emotionally open and is willing to give that back at least some of the time so that, I'm not feeling like I'm the only one that's like being open. Because I've had a lot of people in my life that have been emotionally closed off, and that's been difficult. So
It's hard to get further. Like, it's just more of a surface level thing than if you can't get deeper and have that
exactly,
emotional connection. Yeah.
exactly. And with that comes, I mean, not to like get deeper into this, but with that comes like spiritual, or in some cases, if someone's religious, with that comes that too, because the more you're willing to open up, the more you feel like you can be yourself with another person, and the more they feel like they can be themselves. And I don't know, I think things work out. Whereas if you start closing down, the other person starts questioning your motives and they start closing down. So I know that got very deep, but in a nutshell, those things are more important than anything else. Obviously, having some surface level attraction would be nice. Having some, compatibility would be nice. But I think when I envision myself in the future being in a relationship or whatever, I always think, hey, I'd like to be in balance. I don't want to like be doing the seesaw thing, which like, oh, I'm all in it or I'm nothing, I'm not at all in it. It's like, no, I want to balance these two areas of my life. I want to be in it, but I also want to do what I have to do, in my own individual life.
Yeah.
That's what I strive for. I'm looking for.
That's
Um,
fair. That's fair.
what
And I
was
think you kind of touched on it a little bit about like your past relationships or things that maybe were not what you were wanting. So it sounded like you maybe didn't have the emotional connection that you were wanting in some past relationships. Is that true? Or or was
Wait,
it something else?
I don't think I fully understand the question, actually. Can you help break that down a little better?
Yeah, so like, because you talked about the things that you are wanting, and you've had some past relationships that
Hmm.
didn't work out. So were there things from there or examples of what, how maybe that was not where you realized that's not what you wanted in a relationship, and why it didn't work in the past?
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah, no, I understand now. I think in my experience, I'll always notice patterns in my relationships. The the pattern's always been you feel passion for someone. You want to like rush into something, and then you're like, "Oh my god, I love you. Oh my god, this is amazing." And then like a couple months down the road, you're like, "Oh my god, this is scary. Oh my god, what am I doing with my life?" Either me or the other person, right? It's again, I think that takes you back to balance. You know, yeah. I just I'm trying to get my thoughts together here. I think just what I've learned from my past relationships is not to rush into things, not to like just learning how to be patient. I still want to rush into things sometimes. I'm still a little bit impulsive sometimes because there's this when you love someone, when you feel this emotion, or when you think you love someone, whether it's love or not, you feel this rush of emotions, you feel alive, you feel this, buzz, and it's enthralling, right? So, but it's always fleeting. So just just finding balance is what I'm striving for based on my past relationships, and what I'm not wanting is that what I just mentioned.
Okay.
I think
So
that
what
answers it,
would
right?
you? Yeah, yeah. What would you say is your like best quality, and then maybe something that you'd like to improve upon as well?
Like my best quality. Oh man, it's one of those double-edged sword things again. um that's kind of how I see the world. It's like to every best quality there's a flip side, right? um I've often said that emotions are my superpower. So if emotions are my superpower, they're also my downfall. It's like feeling like feeling emotion, understanding emotion, feeling that buzz and all of that. It's I've often been told since I was a child that I'm too emotional, that I feel too much or this or that. I don't know what that means really. I've never bought into that because I'm like, well, what do you mean? Like this is just who I am. This is just how I am. Um, so I think that's maybe one of my best qualities because it allows me to like envision where I'm going. It allows me to feel what I'm gonna feel. Say like, for example, I picture myself getting married to the perfect girl for me, right? I can feel like if I just focus, I can feel that emotion. I can just feel the joy. I can feel like everything that comes after that. I can't describe to you like how that happens. Same thing with Peace Corps. Like when I joined the Peace Corps, I had taken that decision very seriously for years and years and years. I've thought about it, and I could envision myself doing the Peace Corps, and I think that, right? Like, so I think feeling is like my best quality in a way. That sounds strange, but
No,
yeah.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, not. I mean, it's something that people take for granted, and not a lot of people necessarily are in tune with their feelings or their emotions like that. And I think that's why sometimes there's also a misconception, or people feel like men maybe aren't in general as like in their feelings and emotions, but some people are, and that's a really good quality to have. And Yeah, I mean, I think that makes sense for sure.
Yeah, and again, on the flip side, there can be a downfall. If you feel too much, you risk becoming anxious or depressed from time to time. Something bad happens in your life. If you feel too much, you end up sometimes taking on other people's problems that are not your own. And, then you end up feeling like trapped or bogged down or whatever, and then you're like, okay, well, this
You're
is,
an empath, basically. Like you feed on, like you have the emotions of others, but that also brings the baggage or the weight that comes with it as well.
I guess, I mean, yeah, I guess that's a term that's been thrown around before. I try not to use it because then, that I'm not trying to paint this like rosy picture of me that I'm this great guy or whatever. I know I have my dark sides too. We all do. We all have our, light and our dark. And I think, well, for example, because I feel so strongly, if I feel anger, I feel that, to another notch. Like if I feel like something unfair has been done to me, or, to someone I love, I feel that to like a level that like most people might not understand. Be like, why the heck is he so angry? Well, because I feel it. Like I'm angry. Like, dang it. Like, you know. Um, so I'd like to find or continue to strive for balance in my life. And I think I've come a long way in that. And I think I still have quite a ways to go, but yeah, that's what I'd like to improve, is balancing this out somehow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, let me ask you a question. How does your personality type differ from your wife?
Um, I would say it's interesting because we're similar in a lot of ways, but there are some ways that are definitely different. So I mean, we're both in general introverts. Although I feel like I've, especially over the years and recent years, kind of become a little bit more extroverted in certain situations
For
as
sure, dude.
well.
For sure.
Um, and so, there's that difference. I think also in general, like, I would say Maheen is probably more in tune with like emotions and will kind of think and feel with emotions. And I'm a bit more like logical in my approach versus like feeding into emotions and things. So, for example, like, she'll find this cool activity or something to do and see something online and she'll send it to me and be like, hey, we should do this. Super fun. I'd love to, do this. Let's check it out. And then my brain starts going, okay, like, what's the cost? How far is it? What do we have to plan to do? Like all the
I knew it.
logistics, is it worth it or not? Like
You're
doing
like,
like a whole
I gotta check my
analysis of
schedule. Let me check my schedule.
yeah, like plopping up the calendar and all that,
Yeah.
versus she just like, let's just go, let's just do it, which is great because, I think she brings a bit more like spontaneity, which is good. It keeps things fresh and interesting and definitely, being able to kind of expand outside my reach a little and try new things, which is cool. And then, I'm there to also kind of ground things sometimes as well. And maybe there's sometimes where things just don't make, sense to do, and maybe we'll figure out an alternative or something like that. But I think that's one area where we're both pretty different in, but it kind of balances itself out for sure.
That's so you're off the seesaw. You
Yeah,
see
I
what
mean
I
it's not
mean?
it's not
Like,
perfect, it's not perfect. It's not like flat, but it
I
kind
mean,
of moves around, but yeah,
sure. I mean, just picture what I picture is like doing the seesaw in a playground by yourself versus with another person.
sure.
Like, which one do you think works
Yeah, I
better?
mean it could be a situation where you have two people sitting on the same end of the seesaw, right? Which is not going to
Okay,
work.
fair
At
enough.
least in this case, it's we're at least both on the opposite ends,
Yeah,
so we're balancing to some extent.
that's good. That's good. Um, let's see. So I know you mentioned, okay, you already mentioned the logic and emotion thing. Is it, are there any other differences that you can think of? I mean, obviously logic and emotion are like broader things, but like more like day-to-day things.
Um, excuse me. I I think I would say in general also like our communication style is a bit different as well. And that kind of goes back to the beginning of our relationship as well, trying to like work that out and kind of understand each other and how we sort of both communicate. Um, where like probably Maheen will probably need more space or time to kind of gather thoughts and bring it together. If you sort of bring up a topic necessarily, sometimes it's all right, let's regroup in a bit and bring it back to kind of process and talk through versus jumping in super deep into something right away. Versus, me sometimes I may just jump right into it, but not plan out exactly or miss things that I'm trying to say because I'm just kind of jumping right in and not really, thinking it all through right away. And part of that comes from me also trying to do vlogs on YouTube and be in front of the camera and talk and ramble on and on sometimes. So I've kind of gotten used to that over the years of like trying to let out my, feelings or explain things in a long way. Like if I ever type a message to someone to try and explain my thoughts, sometimes it's like, this super long thing.
You sound just like
Um,
me there. Yeah. It's we're very
yeah.
similar in that way.
And so people sometimes may look at that and they get overwhelmed because they just all of a sudden a giant like paragraphs of stuff pops up and like,
Yeah.
versus Maheen is on the flip side of probably
Yeah.
like sending like half a sentence and I'm like, wait, what does that mean? Or like what.
Yes.
So we're both very different in that way. And I think we've had to like, sometimes she'll send me something and I'm like, hey, can you please clarify? I need a bit more. Or sometimes I'll send her a lot and then she, like obviously is not responding right away because she's trying to like figure out what's going on. So then I kind of, we end up like just talking later when we have time to really like, digest it all and get through it, I guess. So, I think those are some of the differences. And I think part of it also comes from the fact that like she also works in like the mental health space of healthcare, right? So she
Like
works in an
behavioral health.
adolescent, yes, behavioral
Yeah.
health. So she works like an adolescent psych unit at a hospital, and there's a lot of tough stuff that happens there too, and tough things, and oftentimes, and especially in work conditions like that, you have to sort of like internalize. You can't let those things get to you sometimes, and so she, in order to cope or deal with that, has to internalize some of her feelings, and
Mhm.
then that it's hard to undo that or flip that in other contexts as well. So it's a skill that she's had to develop and gets her through what she does, and she's great at it and loves what she does. um Versus, like I said, I've learned how to just talk and go on and on because I get in front of a camera and do that all the time. And so it's just kind of based on the experience. I find that you sort of learn and adapt, but when you're in a relationship you have to find that balance.
Yeah, I guess that's what I'm trying to wrap my head around is like because that's something I experience a lot in relationships, where let's say I'm with someone and I'm open, I'm like writing them like all these long letters and stories about like how I feel or what I've experienced or whatever, and they'll write like two sentences and I'm like, okay, are they interested, are they not, like, and I've been beginning to understand or have had to understand better that it's more of a communication style. But how do you, and I know I'm expanding on this a little bit more. We'll return to our questions in a second, but like, how did you get to a point where you were like, okay, like, like with your wife, like if she seemed, to me, that seems like, okay, that person's withdrawn. Maybe they're not interested. Maybe, they don't care, whatever. You kind of question that. How did you
Yeah.
overcome that? How did you allow the space to
Yeah. So
balance that out, I guess?
I mean, the short answer is, and maybe this is kind of a weird answer, but the fact is we're married, right? So we didn't have that long period of, we had a few months to get to know our core values, and then you jump into it, you're committed. I mean, that's kind of the in a way that's sort of the point of the thought process, I think, behind the arranged marriage of like, you're in it, you're in the relationship, like you're in it for the long haul, you have to work things out. And
Mhm.
so, if either one of us didn't have or didn't fully understand or kind of figure out how that was working, then we literally live together and we have to talk it out and kind of, figure out how we're going to be able to get about our day. And yeah, I mean, it's not a situation where we don't really ever try and get to a point where we're just not talking to each other because we're upset about something or whatever. At some point, whether that night or we sleep it over and the next day kind of talk it through or whatever, pretty quickly we try and talk and have a conversation if anything does come up or something, because that it's a crappy feeling to not to be in that. So I mean, in
Yes,
some ways, I
yes.
guess you could say it sounds weird to say that we're forced to, but in a way, like that's kind of the point. Is like, we got married because we want to make it work, and we kind of have to make it work and have to do it. And so, at least I know that since we both committed to a marriage, we're both committed to trying to work it
So are you advising that I go to the nearest chapel, temple, whatever, find somebody,
I mean,
drag them along, be like, hey, we're getting married, yay! Now we have to solve our problems. That's it.
it's
Like,
not necessarily for everyone,
I'm just
but
messing
I
with you.
guess it's one of those things of like, um it works, and there's statistics and stuff out there of like, folks with arranged marriages have like less divorce rates, things like that, for better or for worse. I mean, you know um but I guess, that's a good pivot to the next question I had of being Desi, right? Like, have you ever considered an arranged marriage, and why or why not?
Um, I have considered it. Uh, I considered it like last year, so fairly recently. Um, and why? Why did I consider it? I've just, I guess I've just come to accept that the fact that I'm, I don't necessarily 100% fit in the Desi bubble, and I don't necessarily fit 100% in like the American, bubble, like cultural bubble. I'm somewhere in the middle, right? So I don't know. I guess dating's been tricky because I I'm kind of going off on a tangent here, but let me just try to explain, right? So for the longest time, I didn't want to date my culture, and my family would always complain and say, "Oh, like why don't you give Indian girls a chance? Why don't you do this? Like why don't you do that?" And I was just like, "No, no, no, like buzz off. Like you're annoying me. Like I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this." And then after I went to Albania, I had a relationship there with someone Albanian and had that whole experience. Went through a lot of heartache after that. Came back home, went through a lot of heartache coming back home because I didn't want to leave. It was in the middle of the pandemic and everything, and we were all basically stuck in our homes. So I was basically down for about like a year and a half, figuring all this out. Like, and I was like, okay, why is this all happening? And eventually I made my way back out, right? And I said, okay, like it's time for me to go meet people again and see what's out there. And this time I said, okay, I am gonna try dating people in my culture, or I'm not gonna at least like discount them, right? Like I'm not gonna say, oh, like I shouldn't date them because of X, Y, and Z, because I'm half Desi and half American, whatever, whatever it is, the idea that I had. So like I got on some dating websites, met a lot of people, went through a lot of things, rushed into a few situations thinking I was in love with someone. Again, learned a lot. And this is all recent, like I would say like a year and a half, 2 years ago, at this point. But at some point, I got tired of just going on a new date every weekend. And you swipe next and you're on to the next person. Either you're getting rejected or you're rejecting someone or you're going along with something, but whatever. It gets tiring. So my parents throughout that time, and I know I'm making this long, but my parents throughout that time always asked me if I wanted to like consider arranged marriage or this or that. And eventually I said yes. But then when I said yes, I didn't fully understand what I was saying yes to. Uh, Turns out I was saying yes to a whole lot of things. And so apparently, like you mentioned from your experience, like family gets involved, they ask your relatives, they ask your friends, and they ask like, you know, the priest in my case, and in your case, they, I don't know, might have reached out to the mosque and asked someone there. I don't know. But all of this happening around me just because I said a yes, and I didn't realize I agreed to all of that. So then I kind of freaked out and I'm like, no, 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 back up, back up, back up. Like, I yes, I kind of freaked out. And then I was like, okay, well, I want to take matters back into my own hands. I'm gonna take this slow again. I remember at the time I met someone on Hinge, and she was asking me if I've ever considered arranged marriage, and I said, yeah, actually, like recently. And she thought I was just gonna, she thought, like, why am I even seeing this guy? Like, he's just gonna go get an arranged marriage. Like, I was like, no, that's not the case. Like, you don't understand. Like, so yeah, so it's been an experience. I think so. The why not now is more so just like, I think, although I understand the process and I understand that all marriages to a degree, all relationships to a degree are arranged. Some people meet online. That's an arrangement, like match.com matched you. It arranged you. Like, it's an algorithm that arranged you. Uh, you know, some people meet through friends, or their mom or their dad has an old family friend that they're like, oh, we think you'd be great with Susie or whatever, right? So I don't know. I think it's a
Mhm.
perspective, and I think I finally understand. I understood that perspective at some point, that everything that is really is arranged, whether we want to accept that or not. At least in my opinion, my perspective. So, but like my thoughts. But basically, if you zoom out, I think I like to have at least a little bit of control over my own dating experiences. Like, I think I realized from all that like I don't want to just say yes and then other people go out and just find somebody for me and say, hey, I found this girl for you. Look, here's a picture of her. You want to see her? I don't know. It just felt very overwhelmed by that versus like doing it on my own. Like, I that was kind of my experience. The other thing was, in the whole like Indian Desi community, sometimes some people are a little too intense for me. Like, some people are basically like asking for all my personal information, or like my blood type, my this, my that, and I found that to be too much. Uh, I know it works for some people, but for me, it was just like, whoa, 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 let's slow down. So here I am, continuing what I'm continuing. And yeah, sorry for that very
So,
long-winded answer.
anyway, so in that whole process, or just in general, um, are there things that like your parents or family members have mentioned that, um, like any qualities that they think would be good for you in a partner or relationship, and do you agree with those things or not?
Um, my parents, I think more or less, I'd like to think, we've talked a little bit, but I'd like to think that they just want to see me happy at this point, which I don't know what that really means. Like, be happy, yay, you found a girl. Like, be happy. Like, I don't, it's not, that's what they say, but I would say from my like more so, if you zoom out and like some relatives that I have and whatnot, uh, they have their own opinions. This is outside of my parents' circle, right? Like, more so my relatives. Um, they've always advised that I marry someone of my own culture, and I'm like, why? Because they're like, oh, because your culture, you want to pass it down, and yeah, you want, there's the whole divorce thing, like you're less likely to get divorced and this and that. And I'm like, okay, well, I don't completely agree with that, because some people that I know might be in unhappy marriages, but they just don't want to go down that road because they think that that's a no-no. That's fine. Like, that's their business. But so I don't completely agree with that idea that like you should date with your own culture so you don't get divorced, essentially. Um, I mean, I know statistically speaking, it might be this, that, the other, but then again, it's about attraction. Like, it's about expectations. It's about a lot of things. I think the expectations part is something that always gets me. I've been on dates with like Indian women, right? And Indian women from India. And some women have been very much like Americanized or westernized. Forgive me for using that term, for lack of a better term. And I'm able to relate with them on a different level, whereas some women were very much so in like the Indian mindset. And that's fine. There's that's its own unique culture, and the West and the US has its own unique culture. But I'm trying to be like sensitive here, but without like offending anyone. But yeah, I just don't think I'm cut out to meet all the cultural expectations that Indian people might have. I just can't. Like, that's just not me. To a degree, I could, but like, I don't want to wake up next to someone one day and to be like, oh yeah, like my mother says, my mother-in-law says this, this, and this. You must do this if you're a good, if you want to be a good husband or whatever. It's like, what? Like, I didn't know I was signing up for all this. So I don't know. I'm just kind of letting nature take its course, or fate, or whatever have you, destiny, and see where it takes me. Even if that means I'm single for the rest of my life, or whatever.
Yeah.
So I'm not
fair.
I'm not closing myself off to any possibilities per se. It doesn't mean I wouldn't be open to going out on a date with an Indian girl, or somebody from a different culture, or somebody from a different religion, or whatever. Just stay open. Attract rather than chase, as they say. Let that which wants to come in, and then decide for yourself if that's for you or not.
Yeah, that's fair.
Sorry, I'm like giving you such long answers to this, but been through quite a few experiences. Let's just say. Let's see. Let me ask you a question. Okay, so before you met your now wife, what were some solid deal breakers for you while you were meeting people, or even your now wife?
So I will say actually it was probably pretty early on in the process. Actually, it wasn't long before I met Maheen. In fact, I didn't actually meet any other person before Maheen. Like there's maybe one or two people that like my parents had talked to, like family had talked to a little bit, and then we just didn't really like proceed past that stage, I guess. And I think in one of those cases, they wanted somebody that had a master's degree at the time, and I didn't have a master's or something, so it never even proceeded at that point or whatever. But on my end, so for me, the faith was important, so they had to be Muslim. I wanted somebody that was either born and raised in the US or at least have lived in the US for most of their life. So again, I can relate a bit more, like you said,
Right.
somebody is a bit more like quote unquote westernized or Americanized,
For
just to
lack of
have
a
that
better term.
understanding.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not, plenty of great people that, elsewhere, but that it just helps to have somewhat of that common, ground, I guess.
Right.
I I did want somebody that wanted to sort of like work or go to school or had you know a degree or something, versus somebody that would just sit around at home all day, because it's just not even interesting for them either then, right? Like at least if you know both people in a relationship working, doing something, um, it keeps things moving forward as well. And
A degree
I
or something. Just like laughing at that. Anyway, go
yeah,
ahead.
something, like but I also I wasn't looking to move. I wanted to stay here in Virginia, stay with family. So that's something that um would have been a deal breaker. And
Okay.
also I wanted somebody that was open to um open to the interests and things that I have. Like they don't have to like it. For example, I enjoy, like superhero stuff and video games and movies and other, all these different things. And I'm a total nerd, right? I have a YouTube channel where I do stuff. Um, they don't have to like any of those things or seen any of those things, but I just didn't want to find somebody that was like, yeah, superhero stuff is stupid, grow up, like kind of have that sort of feeling towards it because um it's just one of those things that like I feel like for a good chunk of my life I've struggled a lot with like self-confidence, self-esteem type things. And some of that has stemmed from, the fact that a lot of these things I like Power Rangers or whatever, people tend to make fun of, at an older age. And I've kind of grown to appreciate it and understand it is what it is. And, I can't let other people affect that. And so especially then a spouse, I wouldn't want to be somebody that
Mhm.
would just constantly bring me down or bring that
Mhm.
down as well. Now I lucked out with Maheen also liking a lot of that stuff too. And now we frequently will watch Marvel stuff together and play games together and all that. So not only is she open to it, she also enjoys it, which was a bonus. But that would have been a deal breaker if they were just, like they wanted me to shut down my YouTube channel or something and do all that.
Mhm.
But yeah, I
I
would say
mean,
those are probably
I mean, yeah, some of the stuff that you're mentioning is like if they like knowing you, for 10 more than 10 years. I don't know how many years exactly it's been, but it's like almost taking a piece of you away and saying, oh yeah, just throw that out the window so that you can be with X, Y, and Z, right? That's
yeah,
just
because
not gonna
you
work.
can compromise on certain things, but
Right.
that's like a big core foundational thing,
Right.
in a way that um can't compromise on that.
Fair
Yeah.
enough. Fair enough. Yeah. All right, let's see. If you weren't okay, so if you weren't married right now, what do you think you would be doing?
Um,
Like
I don't.
how do
Yeah,
you think you would be living basically, or like where do you think you would be, or any of that?
it's interesting. I don't see too much being that different in a sense. I mean, like I actually love the Northern Virginia area. I mean, I feel like I've grown up here. I'm kind of accustomed to it. I'm the type of person that will stay in a place where like if it ain't broke, why try and fix it, right? Like why go elsewhere? I mean, I one thing is I would like to have traveled more, but just for travel and not to actually move and stay somewhere, for a super long time. But I would like to explore more, which I still can do and have done a little bit. But if I wasn't married, the freedom to kind of do things at your own pace, and also in that way, I feel like I would have much more of a social life in a way too. Because I keep in touch with friends sometimes, like you as well. But a lot of that time, and especially for many of my friends that are around the country and in some cases around the world, the most that we can usually keep in touch is logging onto Fortnite and playing some games versus like physically being able to travel there periodically. I mean, I can, but it's so much more difficult now versus then, if I wasn't married, yeah, I would periodically planning and traveling, go hang out with friends, going to different like conventions and kind of what I was doing pre-marriage a bit as well. And putting more energy into YouTube and other projects because I would have more time for those things as well. Um, so yeah, I think that's kind of it's just it would be a more social, more uh, um, world traveled, I guess, version of me, which I can still get to some extent, just have to balance that now against other things.
That's cool. That's cool. But doesn't being married also present you with unique opportunities to travel with someone and share, make memories? Maybe you
Yeah,
don't get to do it as often, but
it does, but it's different, right? In the sense that like before I would go to a like Power Morphicon, this Power Rangers convention, and I would cover it for YouTube and film the entire weekend and film some of the panels and things like that. I can take Maheen, and actually she's watched some Power Rangers since then. She might enjoy it for like an hour or two, but then she's gonna be bored. You know what I mean? It's like I could travel with her, but it would be for different things probably. And we have traveled a little bit, like for some of this kind of stuff. Like when I went up to New York for New York Toy Fair, she came along and hung out with my friends for a day. But then the next day, she stayed with her mom, and I went and did convention stuff. So we can do a little bit of it, but it's just not the same. Like I can't fully do all of that with her and now with Idris in the same way at the moment.
are you okay with that in the present moment? Are you okay with all of that though?
Yeah. I mean, I kind of even went into some of those conventions and things pre-marriage to say like I'm going to take the opportunity to go here once, experience it. I would love to go do more, but at least I can say I've done those things, and now I'm happy to watch from the sidelines. If the opportunity comes up in some way, and I can get to do something like that, then I might check it out, but it's not a focus as much. That is something that I you know did and was happy to compromise on with
Mhm.
being in a relationship. Yeah.
And just one more like sub question off of that. Now that you are married, now that let's say you do want to travel together, if you were to travel somewhere with Maheen outside the country, where would you go? Where would you want to go?
Yeah,
I know
so
you've been a
well,
few places together, but what would
yes,
you
I mean
do
it would
next?
depend on if we take Idris or not, and at what age and all that, because that would really affect things. I mean, one, at some point we would like to go to Saudi Arabia for the Hajj. That
Nice.
wasn't our plans and got canceled, unfortunately. So that is something would like to do.
Yeah, pandemic
But
stuff, man.
honestly, yeah, at some point, I mean, we've talked about maybe Japan, but actually, I mean, even though we already went to Singapore, we both really want to go back. Like we loved it. So, and I think that would be something Idris could also enjoy too. So yeah, I mean, we'd love to explore other places too, but um, we keep seem to be gravitating back towards Singapore, even though we've already been. It was just so fantastic that we would love to go back.
I'm coming too. I'm kidding. I'll be
Check it out,
the
man. It's
fourth
great.
wheel. I'm just messing with you. Yeah, no, I'd love to go to Singapore someday too, but maybe one day. Anyway, all right,
Yeah.
moving on.
Um, let's see. So let me ask you a question next. So yeah, you've talked about, you've had different prior relationships, different experiences, and I think you alluded to this a bit as well, but wanted to dive into it a bit more. Have you ever been heartbroken? And maybe you can kind of elaborate a bit to your comfort on that.
Uh, so the answer is yeah, but elaborate how.
Whatever details you're comfortable sharing, or how it made you feel, how you handled it. Yeah.
Yeah, so okay. Remember when I said earlier during the episode that I feel all the feels all at once and I feel a lot? That one of the side effects of that is falling for someone very hard, right? And then oftentimes, not oftentimes, sometimes those feelings aren't reciprocated, right? So then that leads to heartbreak. Again, you could define heartbreak a million different ways. Like, oh, like, what is love? Is this love? Is that love? Is that, whatever. But I think for me, heartbreak is just about like when somebody doesn't reciprocate those feelings back to you. Like, you feel something for someone and you don't really feel it back. So or they don't feel it back for you, and then they tell you, hey, like, I don't feel this or whatever, and then you kind of have to continue on. I think I've gotten better with that over the years, handling that, and becoming stronger in my own core values and my own self. So then the heartbreak that I have felt in the past, I don't know, year of dating or whatever, it's lessened to a degree. That doesn't mean I don't feel sad, or I don't feel this, or I don't feel that, or I don't question, why is it that I feel this way about someone and they don't feel that way about me, or whatever. So yeah, that's a loaded question, but yes, I have.
Sure.
Yeah. Let's switch it up again. Do you think it's okay to lie in a relationship?
I'd love to
Obviously,
get your
so like obviously the answer is no, right? Like most people will be like, no, 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 I would never lie to my girlfriend or my wife or whatever. But like, let's really think of
so, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this as well. I mean, yeah, to an extent, I mean, lying is a strong word, and of course I wouldn't lie in a relationship. But I think what I would say is sometimes there's a balance to be had in terms of not always speaking your mind in a way. Like if you are in a situation and you don't like something, but it's not that big of a deal, and rather than kind of just play it off, sometimes just not saying something, could actually be in your favor, because people don't also like to like when other people nitpick, and that can get into like little stupid arguments and stuff. So it's not necessarily a lying thing, I guess, but it's more holding your tongue in some situations, I guess.
Give
Can
us
I
an
think serve
example.
you well. I don't
If you
I
can think
just
of
like
one.
I I don't know. I can't think of anything specific. I don't know. I mean, I guess I don't know.
I can
It's
think
hard
of
to
one,
think of
but
a
it's so
specific example.
stupid. I can think of one, but it's real stupid. So I'm not even gonna bother with
Okay,
it.
say it.
Uh, like how like in movies, like a dude's wife comes up and she's like, "Honey, does this make me look fat?" And he's like, "No, no, of course not." Like, or honey, like I don't know, whatever. Like, did you empty out the trash?
You just kind of nod or shake your head quietly, and you just move on. You don't elaborate or get further into a conversation, because you're only going to dig yourself into a hole, no matter what you say. Um, and I think, yeah,
Right.
those are some good examples where you just kind of just whatever you say, honey, like, yeah, that's fine, do whatever, like kind of just play it off, and you know do all that. But I mean, I try in general, for me, um like if Maheen cooks something or whatever and I didn't like it, I try to be honest. Like I'm not going to be like, oh, this sucked, and honestly nothing she's cooked has sucked. She's a great cook. And But if it's something that's just not my type of thing, I'll be like, yeah, it's just not my type of food, but it's good. Like, thank you for for making it and that sort of thing. So it's just the way that you say things as well too, right?
Bleh, this is
You just got
horrible,
to be
but
honest.
thanks. I'm
um
just kidding.
I mean, maybe if that situation ever happens, I'll have to navigate that.
I'm just
Thankfully,
messing with
Maheen's a
you.
great cook, so I don't ever come across that situation. But
That's fine.
but
Speaking of
yeah, in
cooking,
general, I mean, yeah.
what's something Maheen cooks that you like love?
Salmon.
Okay.
Yeah. She has this good recipe that she's done, and it's like super flavorful, and
Nice.
yeah, she made it like a week or so ago again. But yeah, my whole family, I think I don't know if she's made it for my grandparents, so they've been asking for it. Like everybody like wants her to make it, because it's really good.
Nice. Nice. Nice.
Yeah.
Okay. Um,
Um, so would you, question for you then, would you be
so,
willing to compromise your own happiness for the sake of a relationship?
um, it depends. It's one of those like, no, it's one of those gray area questions for me. So like, depends, right? So if, like you were saying earlier, if you found a girl who was like, give up YouTube for me, like, no, like the answer is no. That's a piece of me. Like, that's who I am. That's how I express myself. So again, it's similar to that. If somebody, I mean, I don't know, if somebody, asked me and they said, oh, like, Peace Corps, Peace Corps, Peace Corps. Everything you do is Peace Corps. Like, why don't you just give that up? I mean, like, no, like that's part of who I am. I like being in service in some way, shape, or form. So I like the whole international development thing. I like, to be able to, I don't know, help people when possible. So if somebody told me to give that up, I would be like, for a relationship, I'd be like, no. If they told me to like tone it down, maybe I'd be like, okay, sure, maybe I can tone it down a little bit because sometimes I can be intense about things that I'm passionate about, right? Um, so
Yeah.
so yeah, I think it's one of those gray areas. I wouldn't. Let's just say it this way: if they were asking, if the stakes were so high that it's like, Udit, change this or else the relationship is over, and it's something that is deeply ingrained in me, that's a deep value that I like totally believe in or something, no, I'm not willing to compromise.
Right. Yeah, no, that's fair, and I would agree. And then sometimes, for the little things um like for example, we want to go out to eat and Maheen really wants to go to a certain place and I'm kind of like iffy about it. I'm like, I don't know, like, it may not be I may not enjoy that dinner or whatever, but if it's something she really wants, then it might make that sacrifice because seeing her happy, should I think like in those cases, like if it makes your partner happy, you should be happy that it makes them happy. And if you're not, then maybe that says something as well of like if you're not willing to give your partner these things that they, would enjoy. And it goes both ways, right? But it's um those little things like that, I would say.
Yeah,
But core values, for sure, it shouldn't be like compromised. Yeah.
I was laughing pretty hard because that's something sometimes, like when you and I meet up for lunch or dinner or something, sometimes I want to like pick something like totally out of the blue and you're like, no, I want to stick to what I like. And I remember I've taken you, I've kind of pushed you into like going into, I think it was in Old Town Alexandria. We went to a pho place and they had a sandwich that like you said was like good or okay or
Yeah.
something, but so I can relate to that, in that I can see how sometimes, even in our friendship, I know I'm sure you do it with Maheen, but even in our friendship, you've compromised sometimes there and be like, yeah, all right, let's try this. So thanks for that.
Yeah.
Um,
Sure.
let's see
Um,
here.
what is your biggest fear in a relationship?
I am wondering if I should reveal that on a podcast or not. Like, um, I mean, yeah, I'm wondering if I should get into that or not. I don't know. You want to go first? I mean,
Um,
you're already in a relationship, in a marriage, but like, what's a fear that you might have or have had or, whatever, have worked through, whatever?
yeah, I mean, so one of the things, I mentioned earlier that I've kind of struggled with for a good chunk of my life was like self-confidence, self-esteem, and really like self-conscious about stuff as well.
Mhm.
So my fears have always been about that. And so whether that's, looks, whether that's just I always question a lot of things that I do and, am I making the right decision or not? And so in a relationship, those, your decisions or different things can impact, another person as well. And also just kind of just self-conscious about just sometimes the way I looked or whatever. And so I think it's just kind of that nervousness as well of like navigating that and figuring out, are those fears based in any type of reality or not? And I would hope that the person that when I was looking to get married, that the person I would find a relationship would not be somebody that would put me down, and not necessarily intentionally either, but just like, I would do things or say things um, and just be like, oh, that's a terrible idea. And why would you suggest this or this, that, or whatever, kind of not realizing that those are some of the insecurities and things that sometimes I would deal with or whatever. Um, so those were some of my fears. And luckily, Maheen is not like that at all and very down to earth. Um, and she always is, kind of doing the opposite of like supporting me and saying, hey, like, you know, you did good here, or like kind of giving me that positive reinforcement sometimes. And I think that's something I appreciate in our relationship and has helped a lot. So
It's good.
yeah, yeah,
Really, I mean, the more you talk about your marriage or relationship, it really sounds like you've met the right match for you, or you've worked towards that, whether you've met her or whether you've worked towards that or both, because things do
yeah,
require a little bit of work too, so.
for sure, for sure. I think it's a combination, and nothing is still perfect, and you're always looking to improve both yourself personally and relationships, and now being parents. That's a whole other layer
Right,
to it as well.
right.
But yeah, I mean, the more and more that I think about it, and actually, interestingly enough, I was just talking in general about with my parents today about stuff, and that kind of came up as well. And just yeah, super thankful for for how it all worked out and for my yeah.
Nice. I guess it's my turn to share my biggest fear. I mean, it's not like a biggest fear or anything, but it's just, I think I can't speak on the level that you're speaking on. Like, you're, again, I mentioned at the very beginning of this podcast that we have vastly different experiences. You're married, I'm not. So I can just speak based on what I have experienced, and not being married so far. Uh, I think the thing that probably annoys me the most and upsets me and disappoints me the most, and when the other person just completely withdraws, and there's no explanation, there's nothing, um it just feels like, okay, like, did I, then you start questioning yourself. I mean, I get in my head about that kind of stuff, right? So it's like, okay, did I do something, did they do something, like, is it, like you were saying, is it the way I look, is it the way I, this, is it that, is it the other? And it's not a healthy place to go down when something like that happens, so
Yeah.
that's why when I mention, things I look for in a partnership, communication, like, I really really need the other person to communicate with me, so I feel like a sense of like, okay, like, I belong here, like, they still, are communicating with me. It's when people withdraw suddenly, um and they might still say, oh, like, I'm not going anywhere, but then it's like, okay, well, you withdrew, so like, I don't, not
Yeah.
having that marriage commitment, and being outside of that, navigating the whole dating relationship world, you're constantly, I guess, worry about, okay, is that person moving on to someone else, should I move on to someone else? So there's all this murkiness and muddiness and confusion that comes from it, and I don't like that. Just, so
Yeah.
I think, yeah, it's not a necessarily a fear, but it's just something I very much dislike.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's when you don't know, you you don't know, and it's that unknown that like it like you said, it puts you in that path of like it could be anything, and then you're just consumed with you know thinking
Yeah.
about all the possibilities without being able to have something to latch onto to like go off of, which is tough. Yeah.
And I guess like my the attitude I'm trying to embrace or have been working on embracing is like not latching on to anything, not 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 putting myself 100% in something which I suck at. Like I said, when I feel something, I pour myself into something fully, or I don't. And I think that's again goes back to not necessarily doing that, because then if the other person decides to, at least in terms of like dating world, relationships, whatever, until I'm married, you know there's a lot of confusion, there's a lot of murkiness. What if that person decides, oh yeah, like this dude's not enough for me, or oh well, this dude's great, but I'm gonna go for somebody else. So it's like it creates a lot of confusion, and it's not a pleasant place to be. It just causes a lot of question.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair.
That's yeah, that's that. Let me ask you something. Before you got married, what were some of your biggest fears about relationships? I think you might have kind of addressed this a little bit, but
Yes. Yeah. You had me answer that before you went.
oh, okay. What is the best relationship advice anyone has ever given you? Sorry for repeating the last question.
Um, let's see. So for this, it's not specific advice necessarily, but it's a general thing that somebody told me that just kind of put me at ease. So one of Maheen's brothers, her oldest brother, when we were engaged, um, her older brother came down and saw us a couple times as well, and met with the family and stuff. One time he took me and my sisters out for dinner. One time he took me out somewhere for lunch or dinner. And I remember when I was with him, there was a moment where, he basically said, like, look, if there's anything that you ever need, if it's, at 2 a.m. and you need help with something, advice about something, like, call me. Do not hesitate. Like, you're family now. And just, let me know if there's anything I can help with or anything. And I really appreciated that because I've never had like an older sibling, either. And just, when you are planning to marry someone like a family, you don't know how everyone's going to be. And just the fact that, her brother was willing to like kind of embrace that and say, hey, like, I'm going to help take care of you as well. And you're part of the family. Like I will, I'm there if you need me. That just really helped me. And it made me realize the importance of that. And it made me want to do that for others, as well. And I remember, like I would take my brother-in-law before my sister got married, out and stuff, and we would do a couple things with my sisters as well. But and then I told my sister one time I took her out for dinner when she was engaged as well, and I told her kind of the same thing of like, hey, if you ever need anything, like don't hesitate. I know as siblings sometimes we don't always get along, this that, but like 2 a.m. whatever, call me, text anything. I am here to support you. And I feel like that kind of support is really helpful to have, and something that I appreciated as well. So yeah, not specific advice necessarily, but
Yeah.
just what sort of helped me in the relationship or helped me put me at ease, I guess.
Okay. And yeah,
Yeah.
so it's more like supporting each other and being there for each other. But in terms of advice, is there any advice you'd like to share? Like, I don't know, like
I don't see, the
any
thing is I don't know that I've gotten any like specific.
or okay,
I've
well
gotten, it's more just general stuff that
you may not have gotten anything, but like I'm just saying, generally speaking now, right? I'm deviating from the question. Is there based on your experiences, is there any relationship advice that you'd give to someone, maybe a close friend, maybe me, one day if I'm like, if I decide to tie the knot with someone?
Um, Advice that I would give. It depends on. Oh, let's see.
Take your time.
It's throwing me off because you know that I had to do homework for this, so now you're giving me these questions I didn't do homework on. So
I'm getting a kick out of this.
That's great. Let's hope this is interesting for people to watch.
It'll be fun.
I guess it's going to be pretty cliche or kind of standard stuff, but I think it's don't let the little things bug you or affect you. Like if you feel like you're in a situation, you want to say something, you're frustrated or whatever, if it's something that take a step back and think, is it something that if you don't say something now, then tomorrow is that going to cause a problem? Like, is that by not bringing up your frustration about something, whatever, is it going to make a huge difference, right? Like if you just let something go. And sometimes if it's little things like, hey, you took this thing from a place but you didn't put it back where it was or whatever, right? Like if tomorrow, like it's like if nothing changes, right, and it's still sitting there on the counter and it's not back where it was, is that the end of the world? No. Am I frustrated in that moment? Sure. But sometimes it's worth, especially if you've had two other situations like that in the same day, like how much are you gonna like nitpick or get to it? Because it's one of those things that like people don't like constantly hearing that negative thing. It's important to give feedback and communicate and share, but in a way that you sum all that up, and instead of doing it in every instance after a few times, it's like, okay, hey, by the way, if you could just try and put things back where they were, and kind of instead of every little time it happens. So it's just kind of taking a step back to sort of is it worth it or not?
What if something like that keeps happening and happening and happening? Let's say 8, 9, 10 months go by and it keeps happening and happening and happening, and the other person just they say, yeah, oh yeah, look at me, I'm trying or whatever, but like
at the end of the day, you can't force other people to do things, and it's one of those things that sometimes you just got to live with and you got to deal with, because everybody has their own quirks, and I certainly would have mine. And I mean everybody, yeah, I mean you can every now and then again relay your feelings and express that and say, hey, this is something I really hope we can work on and improve or whatever, but you can't force someone, right? So then it just comes back to like, overall, is that really going to be a deal breaker or what? I mean, it may keep you constantly frustrated, but you can't change,
yeah.
People completely.
I hang my head in shame here because that was one of my relationship failures in the past. Little things just kept happening, and I just, and I think in hindsight, I know like, okay, fine, it was a deal breaker. Like I should have just let it go, and let the whole thing go. It wasn't for me.
Yeah.
And I shouldn't have acted or reacted the way I did. So yeah, no, that's good advice. It actually hits very close to home for me. So thank you for that.
Glad that was useful, I guess.
Yeah, you'd be surprised.
So I guess so for you, are there any thoughts on how to handle disagreements that happen in relationships, from your prior experiences, or just kind of
should be asking
forward,
you this.
How do you handle those things?
Any thoughts on how to handle disagreements in relationships? Get a therapist. I don't know. I'm just kidding. Oh, I'm kidding.
Hey, I mean, look, to be honest though, there's a bunch of people that like do that, and go to like couples counseling, all that. It doesn't necessarily mean that's that
you
you're
know,
in trouble in a relationship.
right.
Sometimes it helps to have a third party there to kind of help mediate that, you know?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think I should be asking you this. You seem to have it a lot more together, in at least in my perspective, the way I view you, man, you have it a lot more together. Um, but how to handle disagreements in relationships? I'd love to hear what you have to say, but what I can think of is one is give each other space, even though it's hard to do sometimes when there's a disagreement. Sometimes people have, and I'm learning this now, but sometimes people have different ways of dealing with things and disagreements. They need, some people, they're like ready to go right now, like let's talk about this, let's talk it out. And other people need space, they need a couple days to get their thoughts together, remember all the good moments you had or something, I don't know, and then come back to the table and be like, hey, we had a disagreement about this, let's talk about this now. And then, if you give them the space, they might be able to make a more productive conversation than if you didn't. So communication's one. If it's big disagreements, then yeah, maybe you do need a third party involved. Maybe you do need a therapist. Maybe you do need a counselor. I don't know. Uh, yeah. I
Mm-hmm.
think
No, I mean, I would
remembering
agree with those.
one last thought. I think remembering your core, like remembering your core values that you have with another person, remembering the good that you have with that person, remembering all the hard work you've done together. That's if you still value, whatever you have. Also puts everything into perspective in terms of like, okay, now I've remembered all these things. Now I'm ready to go back to the table and talk about this disagreement, how we can compromise so that either we can both be happy or we can both come to at least an agreement that doesn't make us both unhappy, but maybe we're okay. Yeah, I'll leave it
Yeah.
at that. I'd love to hear your thoughts.
No, I mean, I think I agree. I'll relay one technique that I've used a little bit. And this applies not only in a relationship, but just in how you communicate with like family members, friends, anybody really. And one thing that I find is helpful is to jot down my thoughts like in a note, bring up the notes app and kind of, if I have certain like bullet points, thoughts of like things that I have that I want to discuss, kind of jot it all down and sometimes type out a few like sentences or things of like what I would say. Because oftentimes what you find is the first time you do that, you're going into it with a lot of like, maybe frustration or passion or something. And then you kind of read it back and you're like, ooh, that's real like intense. That's going to come off, not how I like. I'm upset, but it's over this little thing, and it's going to come across like 50 times as bad, right? So then you kind of revise it and cut out some things and say, you know what, maybe I shouldn't say this because it's not that big a deal, and kind of revise this and that. And that helps to kind of de-escalate a little bit before it even gets to the person. And I've even been in one or two situations where, like I like had a conversation with Maheen, for example, and I said, hey, look, it'll help me just organize my thoughts if I just pull up the notes app on my phone and look at some bullet points that I have. Because it just, I don't know, it helps me. And maybe that's the logical brain of me, kind of have things outlined or whatever.
Had a
And
disagreement?
then
Do your homework.
that's why I'm like literally like when we do this podcast, I'm like, we need to outline these
Right.
topics because I need something to function to go off of. Otherwise, I will forget half the stuff. I
Right.
literally have a lot of my answers typed out in the notes app right now that I'm referencing because I need that to function. But that
That's awesome.
helps in like organizing my thoughts and kind of and de-escalating a bit too. So I mean, yeah, I agree with everything. Some people need the space. You gotta, everything else that you said as well. But that's one technique that's helped me is kind of jotting things down and then revising. Um, yeah.
Yeah. I think yeah. Yeah. I'll just say yeah. but yeah, do your homework if you have a disagreement with your significant other. Do your homework, and then basically it's like before you say it to the other person, say it to yourself. So then when you're writing it down, you're reading it, you're essentially saying it to yourself in a way. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, no, that's
Yeah.
good to keep in mind for sure. Let's see. I know we're way over our time, but let's just wrap it up with one or two more questions and call it a night. Um, what are some annoying habits of other couples that irritate you the most? And we can, if you want, we can make this the last question and wrap it up here, and then continue in
Yeah.
part two in the future sometime.
Yeah. Sounds good. So for me, it's the when people get a little too intimate with in public, whether it's like, yeah, a kiss or whatever is fine. But if you're like out there like full on making out in front of everyone and kind of getting intense, it's like, all right, you're a little you're it's like we don't all necessarily need to see that. And then when you take that to like the cutesy like pet names and stuff that people have and like kind of like, oh yeah, come over here, I love you, honey boo boo, or whatever. I don't know. It's like it's super like cringy to me. Like I don't know. It's just
I might just
sometimes,
start laughing in public, and they'll be
you
like,
know,
"Oh, you're laughing
it
at
just
you."
when people get a little, it's like the honeymoon phase they say, but when you take that to the extreme in public in front of everyone, it just makes it awkward for everyone else there.
Uh,
Um, and yeah, that, I would say those are kind of the things for me.
okay, nice. All right.
What about you?
I think yeah, like the more, well, obviously like making out, find a room. That's kind of like, no, okay, like sure, some people just feel so much passion for each other, but like, okay, hey, look around you. Are there kids present? Are there parents? Is it a family friendly place? Are you in the woods? By all means, go ahead. There's nobody around, like whatever. So, just think, and that's one. And then the other thing is, yeah, I think the that whole like nicknames and doting upon each other and all this stuff, like, and some people do it so loudly in public. It's like they want everybody to know that you love this person. Sure, I'm glad. Wow, love is beautiful. Continue, but it is cringy.
Mm-hmm.
It is intense. It is a lot. So I think I much rather prefer like small thoughtful things, like maybe you're out with your girlfriend or your wife, someone, maybe grabbing their hand, I don't know, whatever, just every once in a while letting them know, like more quietly rather than like, I'm in love with this
Yeah,
woman,
your
everybody,
love
like,
is for the other person. Like
right,
your love is
like,
not for a stranger out in the like. It's great you want to share it, but like
right.
yeah,
um yeah, i think the other thing, so yeah, basically I'm agreeing with you there, but like the other thing that's irritating is when when couples or even people in general just like start arguing in public. That gets
Mhm.
uncomfortable. Or like, fine, sometimes, and I'm guilty myself. I've argued with, a family member. I don't no couple, but like I've argued with a family member in public before. And maybe it was an ex previously. Guilty, but then I can speak from experience and say that I know that's not a good look. I know that attracts a lot of negative attention, and I just think it's good to be mindful of that. And at least the way I've learned is like, if that's what's happening and you really feel passionate about something, it's better to just walk away. Let the person know, like, don't be rude. Like if it's your wife, don't be like, I'm ditching you, bye. Like, but like let the other person know, I really need to go calm down right now. Let's come back to this in a little bit or something. I don't know. I think that's another thing that can be quite irritating to see and also concerning sometimes.
Yeah, that's fair. Well, I think that brings us to the end of our
I feel like we need to
topics.
close on like a more positive note. That was pretty deep and heavy. But yeah, relationships, they're great. Please, by all means, spread the love. Like, I don't know, what am I supposed to say right now?
I'm not sure how to close it out, but
I don't either.
um, yeah, I guess we'll leave it by you all watching later if you want to post in the comments or send a message on social media or something to kind of like share your thoughts on some of the questions too. I think we'd love to open that up to you all, and maybe at some point we can do a poll maybe and kind of ask a question, about
Yeah,
relationships or something too, and
we should.
just
Yeah.
so get other perspectives. So would love to kind of open that up to everyone. But yeah, I guess we'll start to close things off then as well. So speaking of social media, we are on Twitter at the Dose of Desi, and you can email us at the Dose of Desi pod at gmail.com. And then of course the comments of this video, you can also post your thoughts as well. So definitely share with us.
Perfect. Yeah, no, I think it's been a good conversation. So thank you, Hassan. And also just, sharing your thoughts, feelings, and being honest about your experiences. I think I've enjoyed it very much. So yeah, everyone keep an eye, like Hassan said, keep an eye on our social media. We'll definitely be posting a poll. I'm not sure when, but soon enough. Thanks for joining us. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. And, we'd love to hear from you, and take care, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.